This week on First Issue Club, Crone and Undiscovered Country. Welcome back to the First Issue Club podcast. As always, I am Mike D, and I am joined with Greg and Caitlin.
Hello.
Hello.
The Budget King is out. He is sick and in bed.
He's not feeling great.
No, well wishes, Budget King.
This is that time of the year.
It is, and your poisonous heart was bound to spread to your brain at some point or another. But...
And your nose and your throat.
Mm-hmm.
Head to your health cocoon, and hopefully in a week you will emerge healthier.
Yes, drink a lot of water. If there's one thing I've learned going to nursing school.
We actually just started drinking Pedialyte.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so like whenever we
I've
go
heard
out-
about this as a hangover cure.
I was going to say, let's not pretend it's something we're doing for our health as a proactive
Yeah, no.
measure.
This isn't like self-care or anything. It's
to
basically
prevent old people hangovers.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's a weird thing that's happening to my body, and I hate it.
Mm-hmm. Ditto.
Now I have to actually think about things that I'm gonna eat.
Yeah. Remember when everything was fun?
I know.
Yeah, it seems like so long ago.
It was so long
No
ago.
consequences forever.
Yeah,
I could
responsibility and
Drink
consequences.
and eat and smoke whatever I wanted, and I took those days for granted, guys. I'm not gonna lie.
Ditto. So did I.
I didn't revel in them enough.
I think I reveled.
You're a reveler.
I think I reveled.
Well, hey, comics are fun, right?
Comics are fun.
We're your weekly comic book podcast that helps guide you through the muddy and murky waters of the comic book landscape, specifically even the new comic book landscape, bringing to you first issues from the current week wherein we are releasing these episodes. You can go back a week and listen to comics that were new that week. You could go back 1 month, and we're going to have comics that were new 1 month ago. You could go back a whole year. We'll have comic books that are 1 year old but were new at the time. You could even go back 2 years, and we'll be talking about comics that were 2 years old as if they came out that day, because indeed that was the situation when we were recording those episodes. That's right. We have an illustrious history of 2 years on this podcast. We're nearing our anniversary. We are on 122 episodes of this show, and gosh, I love every goddamn minute I get to spend with you guys talking about comic books.
It always freaks me out when we find out how long we've been doing this.
Right?
Mhm.
Because I remember the first time we met up in a bar.
Yep.
And we're just like, you know what? Let's record this. Let's
Yeah.
give it a shot.
Right.
We didn't think we'd make it 6 months.
I had a really hard time finding a comic book podcast that I really enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we were kind of like, well, no one's filling that space, so why don't we make the comic book podcast that we want to hear and see if people like it. And you did. And hopefully you still do, and we appreciate you.
Yeah, for sure. So thanks for sticking with us, guys. We really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any comic book news you guys want to talk about before we get the episode started? I mean, Watchmen's been good on HBO.
Oh, man, I haven't seen it. I need to get Budget King's password. He told me he was going to give me his HBO password.
That's never going to happen.
You don't think so?
No,
I think
it'll
so.
happen. It'll happen.
But how do we get it?
I just want to. We have it. We have it already.
I forget.
You have his password?
No,
No.
her parents put it on our TV.
We can give it to you,
Oh.
but
And they
we're
were
not
staying.
going to.
But-
No.
Yeah.
So have you watched it yet?
No,
No.
but I've read a lot about it.
I've heard really good things. Have you ruined it for yourself?
No.
Okay.
We've been ripping through our list of shows that we have half finished or like, and we're gonna. The Tick is next.
Oh, yeah.
The second part, yeah.
I'm really
I
excited
finished the
for
second
that.
part of The Tick. I liked it better than the first part.
I loved the first. So if it's even better, then
Yep.
I'm just gonna be over the moon.
It was good, but I did the autoplay thing on Amazon Prime,
Mhm.
and it played them out of order.
What?
So be
Ugh.
careful.
Well, I hate that.
I know, it sucked. I watched the last episode first,
What?
and then was like, "What the fuck is going on?"
This is a
And
terrible first episode.
Yeah, I know.
Be
And I thought it was
honest.
gonna be one of those things that just like threw me into action.
Was it on April Fool's Day?
Oh.
Just a regular watching?
God, I don't know. Is that a thing?
I don't know.
Do they put shows
I
out
just
of
can't-
order?
how-
on April
like,
That'd be
Fools?
the
what?
worst.
Fucked up.
That'd be the worst April Fool's joke ever.
Sucker.
Fuck you, Amazon.
The
Fuck you,
fin-
Bezos.
The
Okay, well,
finale is
look, I
labeled
didn't-
episode 1.
I don't know if they do this, so let's not get too angry with Amazon.
No,
Well-
it's such a funny idea, though.
That is actually a really
Here's
funny
the
idea.
end to the show that you probably haven't seen yet,
Yeah.
and good luck getting through the rest of it with any sort of enjoyment.
You know what I thought was cool today at my comic shop was the clear covers, or like the semi-clear glossy covers of all the DC comics.
Yeah, were those called ACE? Whatever. I can't
Oh,
spell.
acetate?
Maybe that's it. Yeah.
Probably acetates, like the clear
Yes. Yeah, they are pretty cool.
material.
They are very, very cool.
If you're an old comics fan like us, they were much like the covers for Marvels that had the label and
Mhm.
the name Marvels on them. And then when
Mhm.
you would turn it, it was the unobstructed artwork because it was like beautiful paintings that Alex Ross had done.
Right.
So they didn't want to just slap a label over those, and they made these really cool covers to do both. But they're using them in some really clever ways where they were like, you'd think it was one thing, and then there's like a funny reveal behind it,
Mhm.
or a more serious, cool reveal behind it. There was one with a tombstone that was pretty slick
Yeah.
today.
Yep. And I have to say a special kudos to DC for doing that and not raising the price.
I know, if those stupid hardstock covers are $1 more,
Mhm.
how are these still cover price? These are like 1,000,000 times cooler.
Yeah. And like more intricate.
Right.
So I think the raising it $1 is a bullshit move. And confirmed with these regular issues right here.
Right. Totally agree.
Maybe it's a numbers game and there's not as many of those, so they're not expecting a real drive in sales from jumping up the price.
That could be.
Yeah. I talked to him, my shop owner, a little bit about it and how like the price isn't any different. And I think what we boiled it down to is they were trying to get people back because they did raise the price on the cover B's $1, and they knew they kind of fucked up everyone's mojo there.
Yep.
So they're like, all right, well, we
Here's
won't.
a brief respite for
Yeah.
your wallets.
Yeah. Seriously.
I mean, those are almost always the better cover, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I buy them a lot. And I do appreciate DC's model of making the A's and B's both really accessible.
Yeah.
So
Here's what I've noticed, and I hate that we're getting on variant talk already. Marvel has no less than 5 different variants for
Any comic.
any book.
yep.
DC, for the most part, only has 2.
Yep.
And so that makes it a hell of a lot easier to
Totally.
choose and have to worry about spending too much money.
Agree.
So I do appreciate that, DC.
The Marvel stuff is out of control, but at the same time, there's a couple covers there that I've gotten that are like the weird incentives from Marvel
Mm-hmm.
that are choice.
Dude, they're so
And
awesome.
You get a lot more variety, and you could argue that they're featuring more artists and people that are getting exposure because of doing the covers.
I would agree.
Yeah, at the same time, it kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth that all of these have such a crazy markup and they don't hold their value.
They really don't, because you'll find them probably a year from now, like marked down heavily.
Well, just like you were saying, every comic gets at least 5 covers. So you're going to have, like, think of just a random comic that isn't going to be worth anything.
Yeah.
Like that.
Invisible Woman, number 2.
Yeah, like Invisible Woman number 2. Like, even like that. I'm looking in the corner of my room right now, the Age of Conan Belit
Mm-hmm.
comics.
Mm-hmm.
Like, issue 5 right there had several different covers and virgins.
Yep.
And there, there's like a, 1 in 50 or 1 in 100 that people are selling for like, $60. Who the fuck cares?
Nobody wants that.
What? Like,
Nobody.
yeah.
Well, and if you're a completist, it's a nightmare. It's
Totally.
a living nightmare.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just stress-inducing, anxiety-giving.
Man, I remember there were people who were trying to be completists for the first issue of the new Star Wars comic when it came out, Jason
Oh,
Aaron's Star
God.
Wars comic. And there were no less than 100 covers for that book.
That it irritates the shit out of
And
me.
I remember Elite Comics, which is a place by like this. It's if you live in Kansas City or if you're familiar with the area, we've got a suburb called Overland Park, which is where all of the corporate buildings are.
Yeah. It's where the yuppies live.
And Elite Comics, oh, now the name Elite Comics sounds very yuppie, is where everybody, like all the businessmen go. Older business-minded guys love their Superman and Batman.
Yep. Because it's a metaphor for the stock market.
Exactly right. Is
For
there-
the-
Bob Kane knew what he was doing.
It's true. There's no way Bruce Wayne is a Democrat.
Oh God, yeah. He has a MAGA hat hidden back in his bat cave
Yeah,
somewhere.
right. You turn the you turn the bat mask inside out, and it says "Make America Great Again" on the forehead.
It's
I knew
MG,
it.
make Gotham great again.
Make Gotham great again. Oh my
It's
God.
my one core mission by beating up homeless people in alleys. That's how I make Gotham great again. It's like, God, spend some money on feeding homeless people. Why don't you?
Oh, zing, Bruce.
What,
Got him,
what-
coach.
What were we talking about?
Comic
Variants.
books.
100 variants of Elite Comics.
For Star Wars.
So, the guy at Elite Comics ordered a bunch because he puts on a convention, or at the time anyway, put on a convention in Kansas City.
He still does.
So he ordered a ton, and because of that, you get your own variant.
With
That's-
your shop name.
Yeah, right. That's your own shops, and it's not just
That-
like a cookie cutter thing
Mm-hmm.
with,
It's not like photoshopped over Darth Vader's helmet like Elite Comics.
Yeah.
It's specialized.
it's like they hired someone to do some art, and you just randomly get assigned, whatever cover Marvel has available next. And so we got like a Nolan cover, which was like
Whoa.
very cool. And he was at the convention signing those covers. But he told me he had people from all over the country calling his shop for weeks trying to get copies of that cover because they were completists. One, you're not going to be able to get all those for cover price.
No.
Nope.
But say you bought every single one for cover price, that's like $500.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So people were probably spending upwards of $1,500, maybe even $2,000 after shipping.
Just to track down all
Just
these
to get-
fucking books.
Every cover of Star Wars #1.
That is so irritating
What a
to
joke.
me. So irritating.
And has that held its value?
Probably not.
Does
Not all
anyone-
those variants.
Yeah. Does anyone care that you have like a cover you could only get in like Poughkeepsie when every city in the United States had one shop that ordered enough copies to get like their own?
It's
Like someone in every major metropolitan area got their own cover of Star Wars. That's how many
Right.
there were.
Right.
And when you make that many, nothing is exclusive anymore.
No.
I'm always pro like having a lot of options and choices in my life.
Mhm.
But I think the comic book world, this is a perfect example of too much.
Yeah.
There's too many choices. Yes, we're living in the golden age of comic books, but we need to pare it down.
Yeah.
Or we're going to get into what happened in the 90s where the bubble's just going to burst and then every comic's going to be worthless.
Yeah.
And then all the talent is going to leave the comic book industry because no one can afford to pay them.
They're writing TV shows as much as they can already.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Everyone's trying to get out. So I'm going to go on the record as saying DC Comics doing it right as far as variant goes. Slap on the wrist for the $1 markup. But when all is said and done, $1 ain't much to have a second option.
Yeah.
Especially when you think about how much Marvel's incentivizing stores to charge for their other books. And they're kind of strong arming shops into ordering like hundreds of books that potentially might not sell too.
Yeah.
So kudos to DC for kind of normalizing and regulating the variant market on their end.
See, we do compliment DC.
Yeah,
You get one once a year, DC, and there it was.
good on ya.
A little pat on the back.
That being said, let's get this podcast started. First up, we're going to talk about Undiscovered Country out on Image Comics, written by all-star Scott Snyder. Plenty of other super talented people on this roster. We'll mention that famous letterer Crank earned his pay.
It was word heavy.
The story here is essentially that everyone's been cut off from the United States for the past 30 years. We don't know what's going on in there.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, the world around has gone through decades of change. Sounds like wars have been happening. And one of the key things is that there's this pink dust being dropped from the sky and it's killing everybody
Yeah,
horrendously.
which really confused me.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know who's dropping what on who.
Mm-hmm.
I thought for a second that it could be that they're trying out different cures and they're trying to disperse them through the air because everyone gets this sky virus. I agree it was confusing because it didn't seem to me to make much sense why their own government would be poisoning them with this virus from the sky, but that the cures were obviously not helping. I mean, we see a scene where it kind of immediately kills a small child.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
Yeah, gruesomely.
And everyone seems to want to protect themselves from the dusters. So I would gather that it's not working, but I wasn't totally sure on that.
I know, it is confusing. My theory on it was that they were trying to kill people in contaminated areas to stop the spreading. So it was like, hey, fuck you guys. Istanbul
You're done.
has been infected. We're done with you. We're
canceled.
we're bordering off the city, killing everyone in it, and trying to prevent the spread of this virus.
Because both the Alliance and the Pan-Asiatic or whatever,
Yes.
the Prosperity Zone, I think.
Yeah, that's what the world is
like
called.
both of them have the virus. So it's not like a us versus them. We can't let it spread to us type of thing.
Right. The crux of the story is essentially, again, like we mentioned, no one's been into the States for 30 years. And so there's all kinds of outside theories on what the hell's going on in there. Are they really prospering? Are they falling apart? I think people just generally believe that the United States had it right. They cut themselves off from the world at the right time. And the rest of the world is clamoring to get the U.S. back or to get into the U.S. to save themselves from the terror of pink clouds and desperation that seemed to overtake the rest of the globe. We get a message from a doctor inside of the States that's sent out to some key people around the globe that says, hey, we understand something's bad is happening, and we're going to let a key few people in, get your shit together, get a team together, and we'll let you into the States and give you an antidote to the disease that's destroying
All of you.
the population of the world.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make much sense as to why they would do that. Why would you seal yourself off for 30 years?
And then let people who potentially have a terrible virus
Come
across
into
your
your
borders.
country.
Well,
You
if
didn't specify who to send as part of the team.
Mhm.
Right.
They chose their own folks.
Well, and who knows when this quote unquote video was made? Because the person who made the video was Dr. Sam. Well, when we find out from the end, not scarred up and kind of fresh faced and young.
Yeah, you're saying in the video,
Yes.
he's a fresh-faced young, well, not necessarily fresh-faced, but he's a middle-aged man.
Yes.
He's a good-looking middle-aged man.
Yes.
And then at the end of the comic book, we'll go ahead and spoil it. He's
Leading a resistance kind of thing, or a small silent minority, as he
And-
called it.
Mhm.
he's fucking Uncle Sam.
Yeah, and he has like a scar across his face.
He's like a cartoon character of Uncle Sam with the scar across his face, which for me was like, man, did you hokey up this story?
Yeah, kind of deflated the whole.
I hope it was just for that panel. Because it seemed like his hair was sort of unkempt to look like it had been.
Mhm.
He didn't have the hat on. I mean, I hope it was just for that panel, and the rest of the time he's just going to be the grizzled old
Just
guy
a normal guy.
that was leading.
I mean, it was
through.
pretty.
Because he
says-
wasn't like that until he turns and he's like got the finger in the pose and everything.
Yeah, and he says, I want you to, join the resistance or whatever
Yeah.
he says.
Help save America. I think,
Help
or
save
something.
America, right.
So what you're suggesting, Greg, then, is that this video was made maybe a couple years into the ceiling where this virus hits the rest of the world.
Yes.
And then
And the rest of the world is just getting it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because the transmission and the air wall and all the stuff that they have
Yep.
has blocked it from getting out.
Well, yeah, and because when they are reading back the message, they're saying that it was transmitted on old codes,
Yeah.
transmission codes that are 30 years old.
Which they wouldn't have had updated ones unless they were keeping tabs on the rest of the world.
True, and they kind
And
of
just-
were if they knew that sickness had this amount of time left.
At
It's
least
all
for
very
the
confusing.
first couple of years
Yeah.
before all of their stuff went south.
I'll say, for how confusing this may have seemed, or our conversation is making it seem, for a typical, Scott Snyder book, I'm normally more confused about what's going on. That
It's an
they're doing
intriguing
this.
kind of confusion instead of a
Yes.
frustrating shut off kind of confusion.
Right.
Yes.
I'm kind of picturing, and this is just dystopian future, so I understand there are going to be a lot of themes between a lot of different stories, and not just this one. I don't think it was like stereotypical at all. But the map that he shows them in the Silent Minority cave or whatever,
Uh-huh.
it was kind of reminiscent of the Hunger Games.
Yeah. I
And-
mean, you can clearly tell that like each part of the country is cut off into like zones.
If you're me, you want to see what each zone is like at least. So it was
Me
enough
too.
intrigue built there to be like, yeah, I'll keep reading.
There's plenty of buildup. All this that we're talking about is at the very, very end of the comic book if you haven't read it. There's a lot of great buildup in just like the anticipation of getting across into the United States. And we do not expect to find this like Mad Max, like fucking disaster mess of the United States.
No.
Like our impression throughout is that, oh, the US has their shit together and has advanced medicine and knows what the deal is.
And we
and
haven't
then you
even
get in and
yeah.
it's like fuck all crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, there were
But literally, like the sea animals where people are
I mean,
like
someone was riding a shark in the desert.
yeah,
You're
there
right.
are squids attached to trucks and Cadillacs and
And part of me is
The
thinking that like
reveal of this page was bonkers. Am I right? Like,
No,
what
totally.
What was your reaction in having turned the page to this?
it was. I almost rolled my eyes. I was just like, oh, okay.
Like
So
it went too far.
Yeah, it's like so. Here's what we're doing now.
Yeah.
I will agree, but I think it came back quick, like it boomeranged a little bit
Yeah.
in the pages to follow.
Unless these are just like statues that they've mobilized, like these giant fish and squid and whatever, and like you can't see the tires from all the dust and whatever. I'm gonna be pretty fucking annoyed.
I think we're led to believe these are actual living things.
Yeah, because I mean, did you? This is not a condescending question, but did you read the back?
No.
I didn't.
So these guys had a friend at the CIA who they used a lot in terms of like helping them with inspiration, like kind of unknowingly. They just went and toured like DARPA facilities and went and toured a part of the CIA that I guess they let you do that for. And
Which is standard.
so they went and did all these things, and then the guy was like telling them about all these projects that they had either like dipped their toes into, but obviously it wasn't classified, I hope. But like there are bacteria resistant fish that they were talking about and how they were going to try to use these in some sort of projects, like the air wall technology. And so all of this stuff is kind of rooted in, and I think actually inspired this kind of crazy story about like, what if the US did use all of these classified special projects and tried to make themselves essentially a breeding ground for all of these crazy, insane projects that would then lead them to become the world leader again
Yeah.
or whatever. So,
Sure.
I mean, I do think these are supposed to be living vehicles, war
I mean,
machines.
you hear like all kinds of crazy stuff about like Hitler literally exploring ancient artifacts, like that shit, like
Mm-hmm.
like obviously, yeah, nutty fun Indiana Jones movie, but you could certainly see somebody in that vein of thinking be like, man, can we weaponize like fucking sharks? Sharks are badass, right? They can kill a bunch of people.
What are you, Dr. Evil?
Like, can we weaponize those and somehow use them in war?
Can we put lasers on their freaking heads?
Yeah, that's
It's
Spot
just
on
like
impression also,
so
by
like
the way.
I really did dig like the Mad Maxian like cars have
Yeah.
like weapons on them and stuff, but I mean I'm gonna stick with the book because I kind of want to see like why the fuck is there a giant fish on land
Yeah.
that he's riding?
Just this idea that instead of becoming this advanced protected civilization, we went batshit nuts and like
just ate each other.
yeah.
Yeah,
And there's somebody called the Destiny Man running around and killing people on bulls and lizards and fish. Like,
I liked that. The name, the Destiny Man.
yeah.
That fucking creeped me out. I
Like-
think that's an amazing villain name.
If there's anybody who's going to be riding those things around,
Yeah.
it's going to be
Yeah.
the Destiny
Fucking
Man.
Destiny Man.
the man-eating bison.
Yeah.
When they showed us the map of the different regions and like the different names, I was like, oh fuck yeah, I want to
Mhm.
see every one
Gotta
of
love
these
a
things.
map. You gotta love that forethought that you're like, this is not going to be some harebrained.
There was
like-
forethought because in the back there's different goddamn flags and different like
No, I know.
origin stories.
I just mean like the map was a really important, significant part for me too. I
need
liked
to-
it up until then, but it was a real.
It looks like I need to read the back of this because there's a ton of information.
Don't need to read that.
That's like design cover
Yeah,
process.
you don't need to read that.
Oh, this is for the cover and stuff?
This
Oh, okay.
Is what
All right, so there's
origins, and
All
they
right.
talk about that they're going to do this not every time. Some of their seemingly more bizarre choices, they want to fully flesh out like how they came to be.
that's reassuring at least.
Yeah.
Does that make you feel better, Greg, about some of the weird fish people stuff?
I,
that at least it was like
As he just shakes his head.
that there was like a thoughtful decision and not just like a shock ya page.
listen, I'm sure there was plenty of meetings and emails sent out for this book. But when you see, I'm being serious. When you cross that line of just reality into the fantastic of just like, there's a goddamn fish on land
They did it really abruptly.
who
Well,
a
but
person
I
is
think
riding.
I think the abruptness was what made it so like high adventure
Mm-hmm.
because you don't see it coming. And
Yeah.
if they really are trying to bring these larger than life projects that our governments
Mhm.
historically have tried to get off the ground,
Yeah.
why not?
I get that. And
Isn't part of to like tell that story to enlarge certain things so that you can see them on the grander
Right.
scale for what they
sure.
do.
Sure, and I'm sure maybe I can be convinced, but it's just like I wasn't expecting it.
Let me ask you this. I kind of want your opinion on what you think about the placement of the reveal. If this comic book had been all build up and where they're trying to actually cross that barrier and get into the United States, that part was thrilling to me. And
Right.
it seemed like political thriller. It
Mhm.
reminded me of the vibe that like Argo had, and I was all in.
Or
Yeah.
even
this
Jurassic
comic.
Park.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Even yeah.
You just don't know what you're gonna find.
Yeah, totally. And so there's just so much anticipation. I felt like they could have got 3 comics out of that. But if I'm not into like this wacky turn and they give it to me 3 comics in, I might be like, fuck you.
Yeah.
So my
Like the
thing
reveal of the painting in that fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, the
I
Jetsons.
think
The
we were the.
Jetsons.
It was the
Oh, the
Jetsons.
Jetsons. It wasn't
Yes.
Fantastic Four. Sorry.
We were like, what? It was so
Were
throwaway.
we might
Yeah.
have been the only ones obsessing over that, but
Oh
still,
my God.
it could turn you from the series if you're
Mm-hmm.
not going to be into that stuff.
So what do you think? Like, I would have loved this to stretch itself out more, but at the same time, I like knowing that this is what the comic is now,
Yeah.
instead of investing like into 4 issues and then finding out that the comic is something I didn't think it was going to be.
I'm actually kind of glad they got into it quickly. I felt like honestly the backstories could have been explored more in different issues coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I think they're going to have to because they kind of really eased or glazed over the fact that 2 of the people on the team were brother and
sister, yeah.
Yeah, right.
That was like a page of explanation at most.
and that he was like wanted by several of the governments.
yeah, for
Like that was kind of like
his
a
experiments or
footnote.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm in for this book. It was cool enough, and I like dystopian futures. I'm excited to see what happened after they sealed themselves off and how we got to this point, which I'm sure will be explored.
Yeah, the next issues could certainly be a lot of back history.
The new people. Like there are just so many things where I'm like,
Yes.
what is that?
It's like this. It's like this map was written by a 7-year-old. Like, did they forget language all of a sudden?
Well, you forget too that like colloquialisms and like slang doesn't always reflect what a society is doing with language
True.
overall.
True. It's just I don't know. I'm intrigued, which is exactly what this book wanted me to be. So it succeeded. I feel like I was just given a tangled fishing pole and told to unknot it all.
Yep.
I'm hooked. Like, not to stick with the fishing analogy, but
Either that or you say, give me a new fishing pole.
yeah.
And you just move to the next comic book.
Fuck this. I'm playing basketball.
All right, yeah. So whatever personality type you are, enjoy this or don't. Our second book today is Crone, out on Dark Horse Comics.
Correct.
Thank you. God, I was waiting. It's the least you could do. So this book starts with our lead, but in her past. And she's very much so a Red Sonja type character.
Correct.
Surrounded by barbarian types out killing classic medieval villain types.
Mm-hmm.
But since she's retired to a mountain and wants to just be left the fuck alone,
Mm-hmm.
which I can feel. I feel that. The older I get,
I
the
feel
more
that
I'm
energy.
Like, yeah, just I would like to be left alone. I don't want to fight you on anything.
Yeah.
You put up a little bit of resistance, and I say, "Nah, I guess you're getting your way. I'm out. You do what you want to do." When reading up on this comic before it came out, I don't know, a little bit of hype surrounding this book, but not too much. One of the things that intrigued me about it was that we're certainly in an era where people are becoming more cognizant of age discrimination and enabling like seniors to be members of society more instead of like forgetting them and not taking care of them and so on and so forth. So making a hero or a badass of a senior is not something you see super typically. We did read a comic
Once in Future?
month or so ago called Once in Future that had a really kick-ass senior character who was literally living in a like assisted living or something. So that was really refreshing to see that character be fucking kick-ass.
Yeah.
But you're getting the same sort of thing here. What did you guys think in comparison to Undiscovered Country? This was light fare.
Yeah. This book could have been called Trope 101, but you're going to love it anyway.
Well, I was going to say, I think this first issue is much lighter than what we're going to be promised in coming issues.
How so?
There's a part where she goes outside of her house and there's a grave.
Mm-hmm.
And you get the sense that she's lost a lot. And in the writer's notes also is when I think you get a better, like they're going to have tons of bloodshed, tons of battle, tons of action. But it's going to be a little bit deeper in a sense that for this character who's not only like your typical going to have to go back for one last job type of thing, but it's a woman, it's an old woman. It's somebody you would never expect to be the conqueror, I guess, or somebody that would have to come back and save the day. They use some word that I was like, oh, that's different. Let me pull it up. Sorry.
I'll say while you're looking it up,
Yeah.
I think her being in her later years was enough to validate this being an original story worth reading.
Oh, for sure.
That was like a different enough take for me to just be like, yeah, this is fresh in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like given like a lot of tropes of all kinds of different fantasy stories and like especially the whole one last dance sort of thing.
Right.
Of like, I'm the retired guy and
Right.
I'm out of the game.
I made an oath.
MacGruber classically starts this
Yes.
way.
Yes.
But he gets pulled back in.
I think, okay, so the part that I was like, oh, I didn't even catch that in the first issue, and I don't think we were supposed to, but doing what you love or being with who you love. So I think this book is actually going to focus more on her personal identity and maybe romantic identity. If you look at the next cover,
It's a lady.
Yeah.
It's two ladies. About to
two
embrace.
ladies.
What does that imply? I don't know.
Embrace.
Tune in for issue 2.
But when you kind of assume that this is going to be about more heady stuff than just, I have to go back and get the guy that I thought I killed, but he's still alive.
Well, there was a passage in the book where the two fighters were like, look at her, she's smiling. She only smiles when she's in the heat of battle, like when all the odds are against her. And then flash forward to her standing on the edge of a cliff, like looking over, she's like, well, not today. Like,
well,
guess I don't die today.
So I think the other part of that was when she gets to like avoid death's promise or whatever. So I also kind of thought that was like a lifelong taunting thing. Like, you're not going to get me today because she steps away.
Yeah, she's been waiting to die for a long time.
But if she can see it coming, it's kind of like that game she plays where like, no, I'm not, this is not going to happen.
Yeah.
Yep.
She fucking owns that bear.
Yeah, she kills the bear.
Man, she destroys that
and
fucking
then
bear.
says to the people that are climbing her mountain to get the fuck off her mountain. Which is pretty cool. That's a
It's
badass
like Lady
thing to say.
Clint
Get
Eastwood.
off my mountain.
Yeah.
She's so Lady Clint Eastwood. That's
Where's
a
my
great
daughter?
role. Where's my daughter?
Are
you doing Taken? Are you doing Liam
Yes.
Neeson from Taken?
Yes. I'm just trying to hit every action movie. Check every outhouse, bear house, clubhouse.
Oh, I love The Fugitive. It's so good.
What is she says something about like, she's like, I thought you were protecting us from the bear. And she's like, no, the bears are supposed to be on my mountain.
Yeah.
You're not.
Yeah.
Get off of my mountain.
Yep, she wouldn't have had to have done any of that if they weren't invading
Mhm.
La Montaña.
As you say in Spain.
Mhm.
Honestly, this was just a fun book. And it is going to
Yeah.
tackle some heavier stuff, but it was a great come down after reading Undiscovered Country.
Agree.
Read it before. So
Oh, no.
It was a very welcome reprieve of having to like toil through something that
Yeah.
was hard to understand what was going on. This was much, much lighter fare.
I think what this book is going to do is it's trying to set itself up as this straightforward story, but we're soon going to find out in many issues later that not all is as it seems.
One of the things teased most of all, I think, is that her old buddy that came to get her on the mountain
The rogue.
to rope her back into fighting and helping the cause may be bullshitting her on whether or not this evil arch nemesis of hers is back.
Yes. Yes.
So that could be a fun, interesting twist.
What was his name? Darkid or Drykid or
Decayed.
Decayed. And she tells him, hey, remember when I cut his head off? So I don't think it's who you think it is, buddy.
Yeah.
But he saw somebody, so who knows what it is. And he brought his daughter, so that's fun.
Mm-hmm.
Little family trip up a mountain.
They're already drawing parallels between the daughter and her too. So it could be an interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Passing of the torch,
Yeah.
mentor. She has no mother, so I don't know if she's had like a figure in her life to look up to. But she looks pretty happy on the cover, standing on a pile of massacred corpses. So I think we can assume that maybe she is only happy when she is murdering and avenging. So I think ultimately she's going to find happiness in going on this adventure.
On this bloodlust of a journey.
Right.
Man, I mean, the book too was beautifully drawn. I felt the coldness of the mountain, like with the coloring and
Yep.
I also really like, despite her scantily clad costume, I really liked the way that she was drawn. She is drawn with a lot more
Yes.
power, a lot more harsh, aggressive lines than I think you would typically see of a badass like warrior woman. You would typically see them be more voluptuous than muscular, and I think she was drawn really well.
That's what I kind of meant of just like, you think you're getting a straightforward Red Sonja wearing a metal bikini barbarian story, but I think it's just going to really go into some really deeper shit about, finding your happiness in the world and chopping dudes' heads off.
Right.
Feminism.
And if that's where you find it,
Yeah.
then you go, girl.
Yeah. Get it, girl.
I mean, Decayed, when we're looking at his like mask, he's just Skeletor and a couple other villains combined.
Yeah.
And she's obviously Red Sonja. I mean, even her hair's red.
Yeah.
And then
The other dude looks like He-Man.
he's like totally He-Man.
Mhm.
Yeah. The guy who actually comes and finds her on the mountain
Mm-hmm.
seems more like the Spaniard sword fighting type.
Yes. Yeah.
I can't think of like a name off the
That's
top of my
what
Oh,
head.
his-
from Princess Bride?
His
Oh,
name is
yeah,
exactly
totally.
like what you would think it is, though.
Like Gastineau.
Yeah,
Or-
that's exactly like I
Or something
honestly
like
think
that.
it's Gaspar Rogue.
Yeah. Like, good. Okay.
He's got the earrings and everything.
It's
Yep.
so on the nose, you punched your own face.
So it's drawing things, and it's an homage to those sort of stories. But one of the things we don't explore is the depth of our badass babes.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say just classically, you haven't.
No.
That would be
Not even in Red Sonja stories, really.
well, and that would be a misservice to say that they don't do that at all, because some of the most recent runs of Red Sonja I
Right.
feel have been like pretty kick-ass.
Yeah.
and
Fuck. Who's writing those right
and have-
now?
added a whole lot of needed depth to that character.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely
So
right.
they're getting better at it, but also just again to go back to the same sentiment that I started with, you don't often see women over 40 in comic books that are anything more than an accessory or a throwaway character.
Correct.
Or an extended family member.
Right. So to see one be the center of the story, refreshing. That's an episode of First Issue Club. Hope you enjoyed it.
See you next week.
Bye.
This has been another episode of First Issue Club. We are a proud member of the Fountain City Frequency family of podcasts. Our music is provided by Primary Color Music. We are recorded in KCUR Studios. You can find us, rate us, friend, and follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, email, and your favorite listening platforms at First Issue Club, FIRST.